The rain came down like bullets that night, each drop a tiny hammer against Marcus Webb's windshield as he drove his battered pickup truck through the industrial district. Most people would have taken the highway home, but Marcus couldn't afford the gas. The side streets were longer, darker, but they were free. At 42 years old, with calloused hands and a back that ached from crawling under cars all day, Marcus had learned that sometimes the hardest road was the only option you had. He was thinking about his daughter's birthday next week, wondering how he'd scrape together enough for even a small cake when his headlights caught something that made his heart stop. A figure huddled against a chain-link fence, arms raised above her head in an unnatural position. Marcus slammed on the brakes, his truck skidding slightly on the wet asphalt. For a moment, he sat frozen, his mechanic's instinct warring with the voice of caution that had kept him safe in rough neighborhoods. The smart thing would be to call the police and drive away. The smart thing would be to assume this was some kind of trap. But Marcus had never been good at doing the smart thing when someone needed help. He grabbed the flashlight from his glove compartment and stepped out into the downpour. Within seconds, he was soaked through, his worn work jacket offering little protection. As he approached, his flashlight beam revealed the horrible truth. A young woman, maybe 25, with her wrists chained to the fence above her head. Her clothes were torn, her face bruised, and she was shaking so violently from the cold that her teeth chattered audibly. "Jesus," Marcus whispered, rushing forward. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered, open, striking green eyes that seemed to pierce through him despite their exhaustion. She tried to speak, but only a croak came out. She'd been screaming, Marcus realized. Screaming until her voice gave out and no one had come. "Hold on," he said, his mind racing. The chains were thick, industrial grade. He ran back to his truck, grabbing his toolbox from the bed, barely noticing the rain anymore. His hands, so steady when working on engines, trembled as he sorted through his tools. Bolt cutters. He had bolt cutters somewhere. There. It took him nearly 15 minutes of struggling, his muscles straining, sweat mixing with rain on his forehead. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, her lips turning blue. Marcus talked to her the whole time, his voice steady even though panic clawed at his chest. "Almost there. You're going to be okay. I've got you. My name's Marcus. I'm not going to hurt you. Just hold on a little longer." When the chain finally gave way with a sharp crack, she collapsed forward and Marcus barely caught her. She was lighter than she should have been, he thought dimly. Too light. He carried her to his truck, laying her gently across the back seat, wrapping her in the emergency blanket he kept behind the seat, the one he'd been saving in case his truck ever broke down in winter. "I'm taking you to the hospital," he said. But her hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "No," she rasped. "Not safe. They'll find me." Marcus's stomach turned. This wasn't random. Someone had done this to her deliberately. "Ma'am, you need medical attention. Please." Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the rain. "They have people everywhere. Police, hospitals, please." Every instinct told Marcus this was insane. She needed a doctor, needed the police, needed help he couldn't provide. But something in her eyes, the raw terror, the desperate trust, made him nod. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, my place isn't much, but you'll be safe there." Marcus lived in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, the kind of place where the walls were thin and the heating barely worked. His daughter Lily was at her mother's for the week, so at least he had the extra bedroom. He half-carried the woman up the stairs, his neighbor's curious eyes watching from behind cracked doors. Inside, he sat her on the couch and turned up the space heater he usually kept off to save electricity. She was still shivering, her wet clothes clinging to her frame. Marcus grabbed towels and one of his old flannel shirts, clean at least. "I'm going to step into the kitchen," he said. "You can change and I'll make some hot tea." He busied himself boiling water, giving her privacy, his mind spinning. What had he gotten himself into? What if whoever did this came looking? His hand shook as he poured the tea, and he had to remind himself to breathe. When he returned, she was wearing his shirt, the towel wrapped around her shoulders. Her face was clean now, revealing the extent of the bruising. A black eye, split lip, fingerprints dark on her throat. Marcus felt a cold rage settle in his chest. "Thank you," she whispered, accepting the tea. You saved my life. What's your name? Marcus asked gently, sitting in the chair across from her. She hesitated, then, Elena Castellano. The name meant nothing to Marcus. He didn't read the business pages or follow high society news. He fixed cars and tried to make rent. Over the next 3 days, Elena stayed in his apartment. Marcus called in sick to work, something he couldn't afford but couldn't avoid. She told him pieces of her story between long silences and moments of terror, when any sound from the hallway made her flinch. She was the daughter of Alessandro Castellano, the tech billionaire who'd built an empire from nothing. When her father died 6 months ago, Elena inherited everything, $3 billion, controlling shares in Castellano Industries, real estate across the globe. She also inherited enemies. Her uncle Dominic was supposed to inherit, if anything happened to Elena. He'd orchestrated everything, the kidnapping, the plan to make her disappear. Marcus listened with growing disbelief. This woman, eating his canned soup and sleeping on his daughter's twin bed, was worth billions? Why don't you just go public? He asked. Tell everyone what happened. He's too smart, Elena said bitterly. He has lawyers, documentation that I'm unstable. If I surface now claiming kidnapping, he'll have me committed, declared incompetent. I need proof and I need time. On the 4th day, Marcus came home from a quick trip to the grocery store, spending money he didn't have on real food instead of ramen to find Elena on his ancient laptop, her fingers flying across the keys. I've been tracking my uncle's communications, she said without looking up. He thinks I'm dead, left in that industrial park to die of exposure. He's already moving assets, preparing to take control of the company. How long until you have what you need? 2 more days. Maybe 3. She finally looked at him and her eyes were wet. Marcus, you don't understand what you've done for me. I can never repay. I don't want repayment, Marcus interrupted. I just want you to be safe. But safety was about to become complicated. That evening there was a knock on Marcus's door, hard, official. 2 men in suits stood in the hallway, their eyes cold and assessing. Marcus Webb? One asked. We're with Castellano Industries Security. We have reason to believe you might have encountered someone we're looking for. A disturbed young woman, possibly dangerous. Elena Castellano. Marcus's heart hammered, but his face remained calm. Years of dealing with difficult customers, of hiding his worry about bills from his daughter, had taught him how to lie. Haven't seen anyone like that? Why would she be here? The men exchanged glances. If you do see her, there's a reward. $50,000. More money than Marcus had seen in his life. Enough to change everything. The men watched his reaction carefully. I'll keep an eye out, Marcus said evenly. After they left, Elena emerged from where she'd hidden in the bathroom, her face white. They found me. They're guessing, Marcus assured her, though his own fear was rising. But we need to move faster. What happened next was something Marcus would never fully understand. Elena made calls on encrypted apps, sent emails through channels Marcus didn't know existed. She was orchestrating something massive from his shabby apartment, using nothing but determination and intelligence. 2 days later, the news exploded. Major outlets simultaneously released evidence of Dominic Castellano's conspiracy, financial records, recorded conversations, testimony from bodyguards he'd hired and then betrayed. The FBI arrested him as he tried to board a private jet to Switzerland. Elena stood in Marcus's living room, watching the news on his tiny TV, tears streaming down her face. It's over, she whispered. It's really over. The transformation came quickly. Within hours, lawyers arrived, real lawyers, Elena's lawyers. Black SUVs lined the street. Neighbors whispered and pointed. By evening, Elena was preparing to leave, to reclaim her life. Come with me, she said to Marcus. Let me thank you properly. Let me set you up, give you whatever you need. Marcus thought about it, really thought about it. The money would solve every problem he had. Lily could go to any college she wanted. He could stop waking up with his back screaming in pain. He could breathe. I can't, he said finally. Elena looked stunned. Why? Because if I take the money, the reward, whatever you want to call it, then that's what it becomes. I didn't help you for a reward. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. He smiled tiredly. I need to be able to tell my daughter that when it mattered, I did the right thing just because it was right. That matters more than money. Elena's face crumpled, and she pulled him into a fierce hug. You're the best man I've ever met, she whispered. She left in a flurry of activity, and Marcus stood in his quiet apartment alone again. Part of him wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. The rational part screamed that he had. 3 weeks passed. Marcus went back to work, his back to aching, his hands to being greasy. Lily came home, and he threw her the small birthday party he could afford, and she was happy. That was what mattered. Then the letter came. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter delivered by courier. Inside was a handwritten note from Elena. Because you wouldn't let me give you a reward. I'm giving you a gift instead. This isn't payment, it's friendship. Also in the envelope was a check, not for $50,000, not for $1 million. It was for Lily's college fund, enough for 4 years at any school, but structured through a foundation Elena had created in her father's name. Scholarships for children of working-class heroes, she called it. There was more. A new truck appeared in Marcus's parking spot, practical and reliable. His landlord informed him, confused, that his building had been purchased and all tenants would now pay reduced rent, subsidized by an anonymous donor, and an invitation to dinner whenever Marcus wanted, no strings attached. Just friends,